guys, it's Trina, and this is my first video in a new series I'm starting called Reading Wrap-Ups. So recently I discovered the amazingness that is BookTube, and I completely went down the rabbit hole. I've just become totally obsessed with it. These are my people. I get so many book recommendations off these channels, and I'm inspired to do some more book-related videos myself, because for those of you who don't know, I love reading. I'm a very avid reader, and it's just a hobby that I've always really enjoyed doing. So basically how this is going to work is at the end of every month, I'm going to come to you with all the books I've read that month and just talk to you about them, tell you my thoughts. These will always be spoiler free. If for any reason there is a spoiler, I will always let you know that ahead of time. So a lot of these channels read so many books per month. I'm not like that talented. Like, I swear people are reading like 14 books a month, and I wish I was that talented, but I'm not. In the month of January, I read 5 books, so without further ado, I'm just gonna get into that. The first books I read in January were part of a trilogy, and that is the Court of Thorns and Roses trilogy, which comprises of A Court of Thorns and Roses, A Court of Mist and Fury, and A Court of Wings and Ruin. So, basically, these books are all retellings of a mixture of fairy tales and myths, and I really fell in love with this series. So I had been through a little bit of a fantasy slump where I hadn't read many fantasy books in a really long time. I just was kind of losing my interest in them, but so many people recommended this series to me, and it really made me come out of that slump and start really loving fantasy again. So basically, this story follows a girl named Farah who's in charge of taking care of her family. So she's hunting for food in the woods one day, and she ends up coming across this wolf who she shoots and kills. Now it turns out that that wolf is actually a fairy, and in their world, fairies and humans have a bit of a rift between them. So because of that, she ends up being captured by one of the high lords of the fairy world, and she basically has to live the rest of her days with him as punishment for killing this fairy. So that's really what the basis of the first book is, but the story delves so much further. The first book is honestly more of a prologue. The second book was so unbelievable, I could not put it down. Honestly, it surpassed all expectations. It just kept me on the edge of my seat. The romance was wonderful, and I fell in love with the world, and the characters are so complex, and I just really loved it. The third book I did really love as well. However, I did find the middle section to be a little bit slow. However, overall, I felt it picked up a lot during the end. One thing I really loved about this trilogy is, though it's in a fantasy world, they do tackle real-world issues, things like domestic abuse, poverty, violence, war, and I really loved that. So overall, these 3 books by Sarah J. Maas are the new fantasy trilogy that I'm obsessed with, and that hasn't happened for a really long time, so I'm really glad I got to read these in January. So the next book I read in January was Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. This book follows a girl named Eliza who is actually a famous author of a webcomic, but nobody knows that it's actually her behind this comic. She has severe anxiety, and that tends to hinder her social skills at school. She doesn't really have a lot of friends, but one day this boy comes to her school, and he's actually someone who writes fan fiction for her story that she's created. So they start having this incredible friendship, and a lot of events start happening from that. Eliza comes a little bit out of her comfort zone, and it's really a beautiful story. I think the way they portray anxiety in this novel is really well done. So the last book I read in the month of January was 6 of Crows. So everyone and their mother has been talking about this book. I know I'm super late to the party, but I finally read it, and I did really love it. So the story behind how I first discovered this book is funny. I was in a bookstore and there was this adorable person that worked there, and she just would not stop talking about this book. Like, she was raving on and on about it, and I just felt like I owed it to her to read it. And you know what? I'm really glad I did, because I was not disappointed. So before reading this book, I had read the original Grisha trilogy. I wanted to get that introduction into the world. However, you do not need to read the Grisha trilogy to read Six of Crows. So this book is written by Leigh Bardugo, and it is still in the Grishaverse, the same universe as her other trilogy. However, the characters are different. There's a few characters that are referenced in it from the original book, but they're not the main focus of the story. This book follows a group of 6 criminals that have been hired to take on an impossible heist. It's super fast-paced. Every time you think things are gonna calm down a little, it just builds right back up and just sucks you right in. Every chapter is written from the perspective of a different character, which sometimes turns people off, but I really liked it in this book. At first it's a little confusing, but once you get to know the characters, I think it really adds a lot to the story. So that's all the books I read in the month of January. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below letting me know what books you read in the month of January. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for weekly videos, and also I've linked all my social media in the description down below if you want to follow me for daily updates. Bye for now, and I'll see you in the next video.